In verse 10, he tells them straight out, listen, this really isn't the way you want to go. Okay, this is a bad choice. If you want to go about trying to get God's favor by keeping the law, it's a dead end. And here's why. Because better living and trying hard won't cut it. Being as good as you can possibly be isn't good enough. You have to be perfect, he says. No wiggle room. No exceptions, no passes, not even the smallest mishap. In fact, he says in verse 10, but those who depend on the law to make them right with God are under his curse. For the scripture says, cursed is everyone who does not observe and obey all the commands that are written in God's book of the law. So it is clear, no one can be made right with God by trying to keep the law. Okay, he's saying this is not the pathway you want to go down. Because if you think that you can garner God's blessing, that you can get God's love, that you can enter into God's favor by doing all the right things, by being a good person, by keeping the rules, by being devout, by being pious, by being super uber religious or whatever, then you are taking on a task that you are too small to fulfill. Way too small. You have to be perfect. And this means that you must always love perfectly and selflessly. Not just on the outside, but on the inside too. In other words, you must always want to love perfectly and selflessly. None of this, yeah, I love you, but not feeling it. I mean, you have to really believe it and want it on the inside too. You must never hurt anyone, ever, physically, emotionally, relationally. In fact, you must never even want to hurt anyone, physically, emotionally, relationally. So even if you want to hurt someone, but you discipline yourself not to, you've broken the law. You must always help everyone, and you must always want to help everyone. You must never harbor a grudge. In fact, you must never even want to harbor a grudge. You must forgive everyone for everything. And more than that, you must want to forgive everyone for everything. All of us have to admit we don't do this at all. I mean, where did we get the idea that doing the right thing with the wrong heart glorifies God? Now, I'm not saying don't do the right thing unless you want to. Do it even if you don't want to. Love your neighbor even if you don't want to. But let's not make the mistake of equating that with the righteousness that God requires. In fact, it's more of a display of how unrighteous we are, which is why Jesus said to the Pharisees, with your lips you worship me, but your hearts are far from me. You see, in the end, God will assign one of two grades, 0 or 100. That's it. He doesn't grade on a curve. And so unless you're absolutely certain that you can be perfect, then this is a destructive dead end. Trying to prove that you're worthy of God's blessing, of God's favor by what you do, by who you can become, and those sorts of things is a destructive dead end. But the beauty of the Christian faith is that the God who makes the demands also meets those demands. Jesus drank the cup of death's curse so that we could drink the cup of blessing. Well, what blessing is that? The blessing of freedom. You see, this freedom that we've been talking about for the last 4 weeks is not theoretical. It's not simply a concept. It's real. It's functional. It's freedom, for instance, from the pressure of having to make it on our own. Freedom from the demand to measure up. Freedom from the burden to get it all right. Freedom from the obligation to fix ourselves. Freedom from the obligation to fix anyone else. freedom from the need to be strong, freedom from the need to win, freedom to fall apart, freedom to take off our masks, freedom to stop pretending, freedom to admit our need, freedom from the burden of trying to impress people, appease people, measure up for people, or prove ourselves to people. Freedom from the pressure of trying to control what other people think about us. Freedom from the miserable, unquenchable pursuit to make something of ourselves. Freedom from the debilitating disappointment that happens when other people fail us. But because Jesus won for us, we're free to lose. Because he succeeded for us, we're free to fail. Because he was strong for us, we're free to be weak. Because he was someone, we're free to be no one.